All right, so thank you all again for joining us here this evening. My name is Hallie Grand, and I am going to be facilitating our webinar. Before we get started, I do just want to go over a few reminders. Because this is a webinar, you will not be able to use the chat, and your cameras and microphones will both be disabled. If you have questions during the presentation, please use that Q&A feature that's located at the bottom of your screen in Zoom. It looks like two little chat bubbles. We are going to be answering questions at the end of the presentation today, but you can use that Q&A feature at any point during the webinar. We are not taking public comment through Zoom today either. So if you would like to provide public comment about the proposed Mariculture site, you must do that via email, which is going to be to our Oyster Mariculture email address. That is oyster.mariculture@tpwd.texas.gov. You will see that email a few more times tonight, and then again in an email tomorrow. And in addition to that email address, in the email from Zoom, you will also be receiving a link to our Texas Parks and Wildlife Department Education YouTube channel, where you can view a recording of this webinar. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Lindsay Campbell to begin our presentation.
Tonight, we're here for the public hearing for the proposed site G-0010, a grow-out facility in Matagorda Bay. Okay, the purpose of this public hearing is to provide information on the proposed cultivated oyster mariculture grow-out facility in Matagorda Bay, answer questions at the end of the presentation on this proposed facility, and give instructions on how to submit public comment. Just some quick background on cultivated oyster mariculture. One, you may hear me abbreviate it as COM, C-O-M. The TPWD permits the activity of oyster mariculture at the grow-out sites, which we also call farms, and nursery hatchery facilities. The mariculture is an off-bottom mariculture, so all the gear, while it may be attached to the bottom, is floating in the water. Applicants nominate their own sites and conduct a natural resource survey. The TPWD permit has a 10-year term, and only eastern oyster from Texas broodstock are allowed for this mariculture. Here are some types of gear, typical types of gear that you will see. Floating cages, so a larger cage that has bags in it that hold the oysters, floating bags, so the bags themselves have floats, and an adjustable long line system. The annual fee is paid based on the size of the grow out or nursery hatchery site. Before activity can begin, they must also get authorizations from other agencies, such as the Texas General Land Office, Texas Commission on Environmental Quality, U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, and the U.S. Coast Guard. We do have an active use criteria that requires the permittee to stock at least 100,000 oyster seed. Oyster seed is just baby juvenile oysters. So 100,000 per acre per year. Year-round harvest is allowed from this fishery. However, the harvest must comply with all Texas Department of State Health Service regulations. The proposed site that would be named G-0010, we just sequential order of numbering, is again a grow-out facility or farm located in Matagorda Bay, that's harvest area TX15, which are approved waters, and is 13 acres. Here's the vicinity map. So down in the Matagorda County, the city of Palacios is here, and then this is the location within Matagorda Bay. The proposed site map would be leading from the applicant. So PMAR has a land-based facility that is a permitted nursery hatchery, and at that facility there are docks and boat slips. So leaving from that facility and coming across the bay to the site. For operation plans, the They propose using 4 different types of gear in the site, divided into 4 sections with a gear type in each section. All the gear will be anchored with helix anchors or strung on poles for the different gear types. And I'm going to go over the 4 different gear types. They will use polydacron lines or plastic coated steel cables with orange PVC buoy marking each anchor point. They will also have navigational markers per U.S. Coast Guard requirements. Bird deterrents will be used if needed and will be reflective spinners or the bird-away hawk system, though the bird-away hawk system would only be used out of migratory whooping crane bird season. So the site layout here shows the area of the farm and then the 4 different gear types in the quadrants. So this site, while the applicants are mainly a research facility, they will be testing research on growing out the oysters, and by having a comm permit, they would be allowed to sell those. Instead of with a scientific permit, they would not be allowed to sell the oysters, and they would have to be most likely destroyed. So in the floating cage section, here's a top view showing line spacing. Each line of cases 160 feet with 20 feet in between each. And they're proposing to have 2 different types of anchoring with those. Both have one main line. This type of anchoring up here has that each cage has then 2 attachment points to the main line, 2 tethers. The other type of anchoring, sometimes people would call it a daisy chain, would have the cages where they are all attached to the main line without bridle ropes attaching them. The next type of gear type is the adjustable longline system. And this is a top view. With the adjustable longline system, you'll see in our next, you have poles and cabling is strung beneath and between the poles, and baskets are on those cables. So they'll have larger wooden pilings, and then in between the wooden pilings, there will be smaller PVC posts, riser posts to help keep the line in line and strung tautly. The cages or baskets then hang off that line. And then there are 3 different levels of these. So a desiccation line above the water that the line would be moved up to desiccate, similar to with floating cages and bags where you flip the cages so they're above the water to desiccate. The in the water feeding line and a hurricane line where these baskets could be moved down close to the bottom in the event of a storm, not where they would normally be held, but just in the event of a storm. The next gear type is the floating bags. And so there are 2 configurations for this. Overhead is the side-by-side, so on one main line, and the bags having lateral lines side-by-side, kind of like in this picture. The other proposed configuration are a double line, so coming up off the bottom, almost 3 kind of lines where the cages are held in between those 3 lines. And here's a cross-sectional view comparison from the ground, from the anchor point up. Again, they would be the same, anchored, then a main line up to either the side-by-side or a main line up that then wise off at the surface where they float, and the double line. The last gear type, which is something new, especially for this area, is the flip farm system. These cages, they're machinery on a vessel, attached to a vessel, rotates and flips these cages and then also it has machinery up to allow for the emptying and filling of these baskets or cages. They're a different configuration of cages than the larger ones that we saw before. And then our cross-sectional view, again, anchored and up with the line of the cages there. And here is another picture showing those cages. So they have this one main line, and then as the gear comes up to machine, these are kind of a hexagon shaped cages or baskets that are used for this. On-site operations will be at the site will be accessed via boat 3 to 5 days a week, daily during a higher production or harvest if needed. The floating cages, bags, and flip farm system will be flipped for desiccation, and the adjustable long line system will be moved above the water line for desiccation. And again, this is all done by boat. Due to the depth of the water at the location, they will not be outstanding in the water, but working the gear from boats. Gear cleaning will occur on the privately owned land away from water. Gear will be tagged with these zip tie like tags that have a larger spot for the information on the permittee. Hurricane plan is tailored to each gear type, but in general, 96 to 72 hours, they will clear out and prep the farm and the land location and follow the storm trajectory and intensity closely. After that 72-hour mark, if the storm is within the cone of certainty path, then work will begin to sink or submerge the cages, bags, and flip farm baskets, and the adjustable long line system will be moved to that hurricane line. Post-storm recovery includes refloating gear, taking inventory, and reporting any missing gear. For the natural resource survey of the site, they elected to do a combination of side scan sonar and in situ grab samples. And here is the side scan overlay with the points with the side scan sonar. You do grab samples within the 200-foot buffer, but you do not have to do samples all the way out to the 500-foot buffer. The site scan and settlement sampling initially occurred on October 20th, 2022. The samples were collected with a 4-inch PVC coring device, and the depth ranged between 1.6 to 1.9 meters. The sample composition was mainly mud or mud and shell hash. Upon the review of the application and the side scan, we did request additional samples in one particular area of the 200-foot to 500-foot buffer, just to verify that some of the readings that we saw on the side scan were not any sort of oyster habitat. And those were collected on January 18th and did consist of mud. And these are examples of those typical examples of the cores. Okay, so the next step for proposed site G-0010 is that the next 2 weeks will be open for public comment. And then if comments are received, we will consider public comment and work on any sort of reply or changes that may occur because of those. You will submit public comment to oyster.mariculture@tpwd.texas.gov. After the public comment period and answering any public comment questions that we might need to, the conditional permit is issued. That once the conditional permit is issued, the mariculture activity cannot begin, but the applicants can then take that conditional permit and go secure authorizations from other state and federal agencies. Once those are secured and they're brought back to us to review, then a final permit can be authorized and issued after the first year's annual fee is received. And at that point, mariculture activity can begin and gear can be put in water. Okay. I will put this up here about how you can submit public comments, and you can also visit the TPWD website and search at the top Oyster Mariculture and take you to the TPWD Oyster Mariculture site. And then at this time, we'll open it up to any questions. So we'll just give it a few minutes. If you have any questions, again, you click down at the bottom of your screen on that Q&A button and type them in. And we'll just give it a few minutes for those who might have questions. Okay, not seeing any questions coming through, but if at a later time, again, you have any questions, also feel free to email that Oyster Mariculture email address. And then we will also add on the website, the Mariculture website, TPWD Oyster Mariculture website, there is a viewer that you can click on to view proposed, pending, and fully permitted sites, but you can find this site there, and then we'll put the link into this recording in that location. And then I will go ahead and hand it over to Holly to do last minute wrap-ups for this.
Yeah, thank you, Lindsay. And you really covered everything that I wanted to say. The only addition is that I will say we will again have a link to this recording in that follow-up email that you'll get from Zoom, or not to this recording, I'm sorry, but to our YouTube channel where you can find this recording and all of the other ones that we've done so far. So again, that's all for us this evening. Thank you everyone for joining us. Thank you, Lindsay and Leslie, for being on the call as well. We will see everyone next time. Thank you, everyone. Bye.